If you grew up on a farm, or even just spent time around one, you know this. A good tractor isn't just about power, it's about legacy. It's about memory. It's the sound of a cold engine rumbling before sunrise, the smell of diesel in the frosty morning air, and the wide tire tracks cutting across snow-covered ground. Now imagine stepping back in time to see the tractors that braved icy fields in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Machines that didn't just work, they endured. They pulled wood, plowed frozen soil, and kept rural life going when everything else froze over. Can you remember one of these? Maybe you've seen one parked rusted and silent at the edge of the field, a forgotten legend. Today, we're taking a journey through the most iconic snow season tractors of those decades. They weren't made to look pretty. They were made to survive, and that's exactly why they've become timeless. Stick with me till the end, because the last tractor on this list is so legendary. People think it's long gone, but it's still going strong even in the snow. David Brown 885, 1971. Made in the United Kingdom and launched in 1971, the David Brown 885 was designed to be compact, reliable, and ready for daily work. And that's exactly what it became. Thousands of small-scale farmers across Europe trusted this machine through all kinds of weather. It came with a 3-cylinder diesel engine that delivered about 47 horsepower. Lightweight, but tough. It had the right mix of agility and grip to handle muddy or frozen terrain, especially in hillside regions or tight spaces. Visually, it had that classic 70s British design. Red and white paint, round headlights, and a short, sturdy body. The engine had a deep, rhythmic tone that became a familiar sound in the countryside, especially during those cold, early starts. It was mostly used for day-to-day tasks in snowy, muddy conditions across rural England and Scotland. Whether pulling small trailers or operating implements, the 885 got the job done without complaints. Over time, it earned a spot in the hearts of collectors, and you'll still find them at vintage tractor shows or carefully kept in barns, waiting for winter to fire up again. And here's something cool. The 885 was one of the last tractors launched before David Brown was acquired by Case. So, in a way, it marked the end of an era. The final chapter of a legendary brand in British farming history. Think that's interesting? Just wait. The next tractor comes straight from post-war America and has a story that helped shape farming in the snow belt. Ford 8N, 1947. Released just after World War II, in 1947, the Ford 8N became one of the most iconic and best-selling tractors in American history. Built for simplicity, reliability, and affordability, it was the machine that helped rebuild agriculture across the United States. It came with a 4-cylinder gasoline engine, delivering around 23 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but back then, it was more than enough to handle plowing, hauling, planting. Pretty much everything a small or mid-sized farm needed. It featured a 4-speed manual transmission and a revolutionary 3-point hitch system that changed farming forever. This was high-tech for its time. Visually, the 8N had a timeless look. Red body, gray hood, low profile, and a front grille shaped like a V. The engine made a steady, satisfying hum. And for many farmers, that sound meant it was time to get to work. Even without 4-wheel drive, it handled surprisingly well in muddy or icy terrain, especially with weighted tires or chains. You could find it plowing snowy paths or pulling wagons through frozen fields across the northern US. Built until 1952, the Ford 8N broke sales records and became almost synonymous with the word tractor in rural America. And here's the kicker. The 8N was Ford's first tractor built without the Ferguson partnership, and it still became a massive success. The end of a deal, but the beginning of a legend. Enjoyed that bit of history? Hold tight. The next tractor comes from the former Czechoslovakia, and it kept working long after the country no longer existed. Zetter 5211, 1984. Now let's cross over to Eastern Europe. In 1984, Zetter, a tractor manufacturer born in the heart of Czechoslovakia, released the 5211, a no-nonsense workhorse built to tackle rugged terrain and harsh winters. This machine ran on a 3-cylinder diesel engine with roughly 45 horsepower. It wasn't flashy, but it had torque, traction, and that tough Eastern European engineering that meant it kept going, even when the temperature dropped well below freezing. The design was simple and squared off. Wide fenders, metal cab, and signature Zetter orange or burnt red paint. It wasn't built for comfort, but it was made to be repaired with basic tools and a steady hand, ideal for farms far from city parts shops. The 5211 handled cold climates like a pro. It was used in forested areas, remote rural zones, and mountain farms where snow and ice were a regular part of the job. With optional front-wheel drive and heavy rear wheels, it could grip frozen soil and muddy slopes with ease. Many of these tractors are still running, not just in Central and Eastern Europe, but even in parts of South America, including Brazil, where they were imported in small numbers during the late 80s. And here's something you might not know. Even after the split of Czechoslovakia in 1993, the Zetter 5211 kept going strong, becoming a symbol of how a good machine outlives politics, borders, and time. Think that's rugged? Just wait. The next tractor is Italian-born and handled snowy mountain farms with the heart of a giant. Fiat 640 DT, 1973. In 1973, Fiat was expanding its tractor line across Europe and beyond, and the Fiat 640 DT quickly became one of its most trusted models. Built in Italy, it was strong, simple, and ready to work, especially in cold, rugged, mountainous terrain. Powered by a 4-cylinder diesel engine, the 640 DT delivered around 60 horsepower. But the real magic was in the DT. It stood for dual traction, or 4-wheel drive. That made it ideal for farms with uneven land, slippery slopes, or winter mud and snow. Visually, it had that unmistakable Fiat orange color, a long narrow hood, and a compact frame that made it nimble yet powerful. It came in open or closed cab options, and when the engine started, the deep roar and puff of smoke felt like a signal that work was about to get real. The 640 DT was used heavily in hillside vineyards, cold weather orchards, and highland farms across southern Europe. It tackled wet or icy fields with no drama, pulling trailers, operating plows, and keeping going even when other machines gave up. And here's a fun fact. This model was so popular in Latin America that it was later assembled locally in countries like Brazil and Argentina, sometimes with slight changes in electrics, but keeping that same engine and rugged attitude. A true Italian that went global. If that sounds tough, the next one comes from the UK and was built to handle snow, mud, and everything in between, with fans as far as Canada and Brazil. Massey Ferguson 165, 1964. In 1964, Massey Ferguson introduced one of its all-time greats, the 165. First built in the United Kingdom and later in Canada and Brazil, this tractor became a global favorite for one simple reason: it just kept going. The diesel versions of the 165 typically came with 4-cylinder engines, pushing out between 58 and 65 horsepower. Not the biggest numbers, but more than enough to work hard all day long through every season, including freezing winters and icy mornings. Its iconic look featured bright red paint, silver details, large rear tires, and a sturdy open frame. Some had high exhausts that puffed steam like a winter chimney, and others were fitted with front guards to deal with rough terrain and snow-covered fields. The 165 was often used in winter climates with chains on the tires, plowing frozen paths or hauling loads through slushy fields. Its mechanical simplicity meant fewer things could go wrong, and when they did, repairs were easy and cheap, making it a go-to tractor for decades. And here's a cool piece of trivia. Even after Massey started building them in Brazil, some farmers swore by the imported UK or Canadian models, claiming they held up better. Myth or not, the respect was real. And speaking of respect, the next tractor on this list came straight out of the US, and it worked so hard in cold weather, some people used to call it a snowplow in disguise. International Harvester 584, 1977. By the late 1970s, International Harvester had built a solid reputation in the farming world, and in 1977 they dropped the 584, a mid-sized tractor that balanced muscle, comfort, and cold weather performance like few others. Under the hood, it packed a 4-cylinder diesel engine with about 60 to 65 horsepower. But beyond the specs, this tractor had one mission: do the job, no matter the weather. And it did, especially in snowy regions across North America. The 584 stood tall, with a wider stance and a more modern cab design for its time. Painted in IH's trademark red and white, with a vertical exhaust stack and solid lines, it looked like it meant business. And it sounded the part too. The engine had a low, steady growl that echoed across the fields, even on the coldest mornings. In practice, this tractor was used year-round. But winter is where it truly earned respect. You'd find it in the snowy backroads of Canada and the frozen plains of the northern US, pulling trailers, spreading feed, or even clearing snow with modified attachments. Here's something interesting. The 584 was one of the first tractors in its class to offer an optional in-cab heater. That's right, a heater in a tractor. In freezing temperatures, it wasn't just a luxury. It kept operators going through long, brutal shifts. Ready for more? Because next up is a machine built in the land of ice and forests. When the Swedes build a tractor, they build it ready for war with winter. Volvo BM650, 1970. Straight from Sweden, the Volvo BM650 was launched in 1970 as a cold-weather powerhouse. Designed to work in snow, ice, and rugged terrain, it became a go-to machine for farmers and loggers across the Scandinavian countryside. With a four-cylinder diesel engine delivering around 65 to 70 horsepower, this tractor wasn't about speed. It was about torque, traction, and not giving up. It was heavy, well-balanced, and built like a tank, perfect for frosty slopes and uneven ground. It featured Volvo BM's classic yellow paint, large fenders, and a spacious cab with wide visibility, ideal for those foggy mornings and snowy landscapes. Operators appreciated the comfort, especially when they had to work through harsh Nordic winters. The BM650 saw action in agriculture, forestry, and even small municipal jobs like clearing snow in rural airports or keeping mountain roads accessible. It was equipped with front-loader mounts, snowplow attachments, and even logging winches in some versions. And here's a snow season secret. Some of these tractors were modified with ski-like attachments and oversized rear tires for extra grip in deep snow, turning a basic farm tractor into a winter warrior. If you thought that was impressive, hold tight, because the next one brings brute American strength with a growl that could shake snow off the trees. Case 1070, 1970. In 1970, Case introduced one of the most powerful models in its Agri-King series, the 1070. Built to the United States, this was a machine made for serious, year-round work, and that included pushing through snow, mud, and frozen ground like it was nothing. Under the hood, it packed a 6-cylinder diesel engine, delivering about 108 horsepower. It had a two-wheel drive setup by default, but with its size, torque, and weight, it handled winter terrain better than most tractors in its class. The Case 1070 stood out visually. It had a tall stance, a bold white and orange paint job, squared-off body lines, and a vertical exhaust stack that made it look and sound like a beast. The engine growl was deep and powerful, the kind that turned heads even before you saw the tractor. Farmers in snowy regions loved it for its pulling strength and long working hours. When fitted with tire chains and proper ballast, it had no problem operating on frozen fields or steep, icy tracks. From hauling grain to running snow-clearing attachments, it was a cold-season workhorse. Here's something not everyone knows. The 1070 was one of the first Case tractors to feature a raised operator platform and more space inside the cab. That added comfort made a big difference on long winter days, when you didn't leave the seat from sunrise to sundown. If that sounds tough, wait until you meet the next tractor. Designed in the Soviet Union to survive not just work, but war, snow, and time itself. Belarus MTZ50, 1961, former USSR. Launched in 1961 by the Minsk Tractor Works, the Belarus MTZ50 was a Soviet-era legend. It wasn't built for comfort, it wasn't built for style. It was built to survive, and it did, through decades of harsh winters, muddy springs, and brutal work. with a 4-cylinder diesel engine pushing around 55 to 60 horsepower. The MTZ50 was a medium-duty tractor that could take abuse like few others. Its tall, boxy frame and high-clearance tires made it a solid performer on snow-covered trails and frozen ground. Painted in Soviet red or dark blue, its design was pure utility. Flat panels, metal cab, thick tires, and minimal electronics. When it started up, the engine gave off a loud, dry rumble that let you know something heavy was about to get done. It served in collective farms, state-run forestry units, and even in military roles. During snowy seasons, the MTZ50 often worked with chains or custom attachments to keep going where other tractors stalled. It was used for logging, hauling, snow removal, and plowing through deep frost. Here's the wild part. To this day, hundreds of MTZ50s are still running in rural parts of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, many with original engines and transmissions. It's one of the few machines from that era that's still not just respected, it's still earning its keep. And now, we've reached the final name on this list. A machine so legendary that it's still working in snowy fields all over the world, and still inspiring new models to this day. John Deere 4020, 1963. In 1963, John Deere launched a machine that would change farming forever, the legendary 4020. Built in the United States, this tractor became a global symbol of power, reliability, and endurance, and it's still considered one of the greatest tractors ever made. Under the hood, it came with a 6-cylinder diesel engine that delivered about 95 horsepower. But what made the 4020 so special wasn't just the specs, it was how well it handled the job, day after day, year after year. And yes, it handled cold weather like a champ. Its design was pure John Deere, classic green body, bright yellow wheels, tall frame, and a vertical exhaust stack that gave off that unmistakable diesel thunder. You could hear it coming down a snowy road before you even saw it. It was used everywhere, from massive cornfields in the Midwest to frost-covered farms in Canada. Whether it was pulling a plow, towing a trailer, or clearing snow with a blade up front, the 4020 never complained. It just worked. And now for the jaw-dropper. Between 1963 and 1972, John Deere sold over 175,000 units of the 4020. That's not just popular, that's legendary status. And even today, tens of thousands of them are still running strong, restored or original. One more thing, there are documented cases of 4020s running more than 20,000 hours without ever needing a full engine rebuild. That's not just durability, that's straight-up mechanical immortality. Now tell me this, after seeing all these rare snow tractors from the golden era, which one would you love to bring back and keep alive in your collection? And which one do you think deserves to be preserved as a piece of frozen history? Today we traveled through decades of cold weather farming history, machines that didn't just work, they endured. These weren't just tractors, they were companions in the snow, heroes in the mud, and legends in the silence of frozen mornings. They remind us that good engineering lasts, that hard work leaves marks, and that sometimes the loudest legacy comes from an old diesel engine starting up in the cold. If you love this kind of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, because every week we bring you stories of the most incredible machines that conquer snow, ice, and the wildest environments on Earth. See you in the next video.